is Grace at Chef's Choice Microgreens. My husband Matt and I started this business about 6 months ago. We decided to grow commercially for chefs in the local Portland, Oregon area. So currently we grow 3 products. One of them is wasabi, one of them is cilantro, and the other is Chef's Mix. We're going to be launching our individual subscription soon. So in our Chef's Mix are multiple different microgreen products. So we do broccoli, lettuce, pink amaranth, arugula, purple radish, and also sorrel. It has a really lemony citrus flavor and beautiful veins in it. Also, we put peas in there often, just the very early peas, just the small first start. The pink amaranth obviously is in there for the color. It doesn't have a lot of flavor, it's more of an earthy flavor, kind of like lettuce. And the lettuce that we use is really light green. So the pink amaranth and the light green is really great with color. It kind of contrasts, but the flavor really comes into the Chef's Mix with the arugula and the radish, which makes it kind of a spicy mix. Chefs love it for the flavor and the color. We have some sushi chefs that order wasabi and a few other chefs that use the cilantro. As we launch our individual subscription, we might change it up in terms of what we sell to individuals. I'm not sure yet. We're kind of filling it out, so you get to follow along and see how we kind of develop our business over time. Like I said, we've been open for 6 months only. We service about 4 chefs and 2 individuals so far. And so far it's a good business to have because the overhead is low. You don't have a storefront. So we plant on one day, we harvest on another, and we deliver on another. And what we decided to do is always deliver on a Friday. We give free delivery unless people want us to deliver on a different day, and then we make them pay for that delivery. So far everybody just says, sure, I'll do Friday delivery, because that ends up being cheap for them and convenient for us. So the way that we grow is by using hard seeding and bottom trays. We only use the bottom tray during germination. We use the seeding tray after germination in these Crop King channels. We're using 12-foot channels, 2 on each shelf, and we custom built these shelves. So these channels end up draining into a reservoir. And I'll show you all the technical stuff of what we do on a different video, but today we're going to talk about planting. So, like I said, we use a bottom tray and a seeding tray. First, we started to try to grow hydroponically using coconut coir mats. What we found is that those mats have a very strong rubbery smell, which actually gives the microgreens a kind of a rubbery flavor. And we didn't realize it until we experimented with soil. The soil gives the microgreens a really natural, delicious flavor, but also more seeds germinate in soil than they do on these coconut coirs. Not to mention they get bigger. We found that with soil, the quality of the microgreen, the flavor, the germination rate was way higher. Another thing that we didn't like about the coconut coir is that they say it's organic, and it probably is, but it's being created in China. We couldn't really find one locally sourced. What we realized is that it might be created organically in China, but when it comes through customs here in the US, they spray it down with fungicide. So you can't necessarily trust the organic quality of things that are being shipped in from China. Organic matters to us. We're not certified organic yet. We still want to grow in an organic fashion. One other thing we learned is that it matters what kind of soil that you have. As you can see, this soil is very fine, and we tried to grow with the type of soil that has perlite in it with the white beads. We tried to grow with soil that wasn't so fine, even just more bark chippy. We've tried different soils, and we actually were surprised to find that the soil matters enormously. What it does is not necessarily how many seeds germinate, not necessarily how big they get, but you know what? The timing is huge. When it comes to large seeds like peas or sunflowers or even radish, it doesn't matter as much. But when it comes to small seeds, the soil, having fine soil matters incredibly. It's the difference between 3 or 4 days extra growing from germination to harvest. It's a lot shorter than people were telling us it was. They were saying it was like 10 to 12 days for these to be ready to harvest. So we started off with fine soil. We were like, wow, we're at 7 days. That's amazing. And we thought it was just we had this great controlled climate or something, but we changed soils not thinking that it was that important because it was just a little cheaper. The soil ended up causing 3 or 4 extra days of grow time. So everything that you change when you're growing matters, and you have to keep track of that. What we find is the finer the seed, the finer the soil, and it matters for time, not germination rate or quality necessarily. We fill the tray up pretty high, I would say like 3/4 of the way high, for especially microgreens that are very small in nature. Like, it doesn't really matter with peas or sunflowers, but with smaller microgreens, finer ones like broccoli and wasabi, for example, lettuce or arugula, it matters to put the soil higher, and here's why. When they're really thick, they need that airflow to go through the inside, but if the microgreens are growing just up to the ledge of, it's not getting circulation underneath, and it's a perfect environment for mold to grow because they stay wet. Not just mold, this is also really important. What ends up happening is when it comes time to harvest, your microgreens are wet. And that matters when it comes to the duration of your product in the refrigerator. The ideal microgreens packaged is dry. That gives it the longest duration in the refrigerator or anywhere else. Also, it'll cut down on the potential for contaminants, both in the tray and also in the refrigerator. You just want that airflow to go through and dry them out before it's time to harvest. Filling this, and then your microgreens will grow maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch over the tray, which brings that circulation in. We thought to ourselves, why wouldn't we just use 1 inch tray so we don't have to use as much soil? So we tried, we ordered them. What ends up happening is, as you can see, the trays are wider at the top than they are at the bottom. Or actually they're 9 inches on the bottom. Well, or 9.5, I can't remember, but they're smaller on the bottom and they wedge out. Well, when you have a 1 inch tray, what ends up happening is this stays the same length and this is shorter. These fit perfectly inside the channel. There's just a little bit of space, which is great, but when these are shorter, the wideness up here gets stuck right about here, and you don't end up getting the water to touch the very bottom, or at least not for any length of time. So really, you need them to be taller if you're going to use these Crop King channels. It's important to make sure that your soil is pretty flat, because if there's ridges and bumps, your microgreens are going to do the exact same thing. It's interesting, when you have a flat surface, you have your microgreens flat and the air gets through them better, but if it's really bumpy, you'll have the microgreens doing this, and it's harder to get the circulation through there as well. We're using these spice containers that people usually buy for their kitchens, and they put on a magnetic wall. We put a label on it, and we say either this is a half tray or a whole tray, and then we have the name of the plant and also the ounces that we're going to use. So because it's a family business, at this point, our son, he's 12, he likes to participate, and one way that he can participate is measuring out the seeds and making sure that he gets that number of ounces in the container, and we come out and we say, okay, this is half tray, so we know to put it in a half tray or a whole tray. The great thing about these containers too is you can pour it directly from here. See how it opens like that? It has a pour spout, but it also has one of those, like a salt shaker. It doesn't really work for seeding trays, so I use this one. I actually have him fill it with only 0.9 ounces because I find that when you get just a little too many in there, they don't dry out and they don't get quite as big. And I don't like having a wet product at the end of the harvest. They also are more prone to rot when they're overly crowded. Sometimes you end up dropping too much in one spot, so you just spread it out a little bit before you wet it down. So arugula tends to stick together. Once it gets wet, it gets kind of jelly-like. So if there's a whole bunch in one spot, and then you get them wet, they'll stick together. And as the sprout tries to grow up, it's stuck to another one, and they don't grow very well. You have to really power wash them almost. So with arugula, basically with most microgreens, you don't put dirt on top. With cilantro, you do. That's the only one I have discovered that you really do need to cover with dirt. So what we have found out about arugula is that it doesn't like weight. Most of the lettuces don't like weight at all. We would take a bottom tray and put it on top when it comes to other crops, and some people, they turn the bottom tray over when they don't want weight on it. But I like using tinfoil on top. That way it keeps it sealed. It's not going to air out because we have a lot of air circulating in here, and so we only water we water twice a day, so every 12 hours. But I don't want these seedlings to dry out at all. So I cover it with tinfoil. It does two things. Not only does it keep it wet, but it also really blacks out. This looks like it blacks out, but it's wobbly, and so there's always going to be light coming in. And that does actually matter. I mean, these plants like a dark atmosphere, and because it's not covered with dirt, it is important to make sure it's blacked out. Aluminum foil is recyclable in our area, but not only that, we reuse it. So we cover it on top. When we're done with it, we don't just throw it out. We use it when we are going to clean these channels at the end of the week. We use that used tinfoil to put on a different channel, move these wet, dirty trays on top of the old tinfoil so that it's not contaminating the other channel when we wash out this one. So we wash out the channels weekly. The way that we keep track of our product every week is that we give it a batch number. So we are up to batch number 33. So for 33 weeks now, we have been professionally growing, or I guess I should say commercially growing. We've actually been practicing growing since last March or April, but we really kind of practiced this business for a few months before we really launched it. We wanted to make sure we had what we needed, and I'm glad we did, because what we found, like I said, is we didn't want to grow hydroponically. We ended up wanting to use soil. So I write the batch number, and then I write the plant, so arugula, and then I write the date. I find that during germination, I really don't need to know what kind of plant this is, so I just end up putting it on the seeding tray, and like I said, when we're done germinating and it needs to be under light, we remove it from the bottom tray and we put it over here. So we do want this information on the seeding tray itself. From seed all the way to harvest, we have a 7-day period. They get to be a really decent size, most of the plants. We do have a few that take 2 weeks, and I'll tell you what those are. The ones that take 7 days are broccoli, wasabi, arugula, peas, and radish. Actually, radish is more like a 6-day grow. So we plant that a day later than we do the rest of our weekly plant. So the ones that take 2 weeks are pink amaranth and lettuce. And then cilantro and sorrel take between 3 and 5 weeks to really get to that place of maturity. We're still testing that out. As you probably have heard by other videos, cilantro and sorrel are actually really difficult crops to grow. Part of the difficulty is that not all the seeds germinate, and the seeds are expensive, and that's actually probably why they're expensive, is that they're not all going to germinate. So there are tricks to it though, which we've discovered, and I can talk about that in another video. So I come out here every 12 hours, usually 6 in the morning before I go to work, spray them down with the sprayer, and then in the evening after dinner about the same time, I'll just spray them down again. So every 12 hours, and so they end up staying under the tinfoil for about 4 days, most of them, and then they come out and end up in here for the last 3 days before we harvest. And they really grow rapidly in these channels and with these lights. Now I do the same thing with these channels. When I spray down these seeds that are germinating, I also pour water. We are not automated yet, but we pour water at the beginning of these channels, and it saturates. Every 12 hours we spray down the seeds that are germinating, and then the ones that take 2 weeks are sitting here, so usually lettuce and pink amaranth and sorrel and cilantro. Those are all always kind of sitting here doing what they do, but we do have, like I said, every 7 days, the others are just in rotation really quickly. Thank you for watching this video. If you like what we're doing here, subscribe, give it a like. I'm going to be doing videos like how to grow sorrel, how to grow cilantro, how to build a system like this, the difference between hydroponics and growing with soil, also what we've learned when it comes to business in terms of selling to chefs or selling to individuals. We're going to launch our individual subscription soon, so we'll see how that goes. I'll keep you posted. Thanks for watching.